And I will read, we always start with a land acknowledgement, and I'll read that this evening. The land on which the city of St. John or Monoquest is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Pescatawakari, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and to resources. And I usually ask everyone to just take a moment to think about those words. Okay, and I'll ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem. Okay, City Clerk, next item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Deputy and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is disclosures of conflict of interest, if we have any.
Not seeing any. Next item.
And number 4.1 on the agenda under business matters is Heatherway future use.
Okay, so I'll just quickly introduce this one. On the 27th of November, the city held a public meeting to talk about Heatherway, and we had our staff there, and we invited the public to come because we were looking to find out what the public's response would be of where they want to see Heatherway going. So that item had come to council in 2021, and at the time, the recommendation was just to pave it and just continue to move on with it. And the council said, well, are there ways that we can improve Heatherway? What can we do? And we tried to have the open house in those days, but that was right after council. There wasn't much uptake. And so it's been sort of in limbo over the last little bit of what would we like to do with it. And whenever we look at doing anything, especially with roads, for people, we're always trying to figure out active transportation. How would that work? How can we increase and pedestrianize our streets? How do we reduce those conflict points with vehicles and cars? How do we create shorter and more short distances of crossing the streets to reduce the impact of cars and people? So how do we create that safer neighborhood? So that was the intention. And if you've ever listened to council when it comes to vehicles, I always go back to my grade 11 physics of force equals mass times acceleration. How do you reduce the speed for safety? So everything we do is with an interest of what's best for the whole community, not just the drivers, but the walkers. How do we increase safety? So when we had our open house, what we heard overwhelmingly was that the population around Heatherway who came to that, and the place was full. I was there, and it was nice to see that kind of engagement. So I do appreciate everyone that turned up there. It's nice to see that, to give us that feedback. But overwhelmingly, people wanted to have that roadway reopened and the 4 lanes paved. So we said, well, how can we accommodate that with that overwhelming response? How can we create that urgency, I guess, with it to try to get it done? So Mr. O'Reilly, who you would have all met if you were there, who did the presentation, you know, he and the CAO tried to organize something to try to get this in on an emergency or a short-term meeting. It's our in-between meetings. We don't have our regular meeting till next week to try to accommodate that. So Mr. O'Reilly is here tonight. If council has any questions tonight regarding Heatherway, there is a recommendation in everyone's kit. I'm sure you have all read it. So I can read that recommendation. I'll just have to get into my kit really quickly here. Okay, if you have it here, I'll take it. Here we go. Recommendation. Yeah. Okay. To direct Common Council, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to reopen all 4 lanes of Heatherway to vehicular traffic as soon as practically possible in 2024, and plan to finish the asphalt resurfacing of the remaining lanes of Heatherway in 2025. So I do have, like I said, Director O'Reilly is here to answer any questions. And Councillor Stewart, I'm going to go right over to you first.
I'm going to move staff recommendation.
Okay.
I don't really need that here. And if I get a seconder, I'd just like to speak a couple words to it.
Okay, Councillor Lowe, go ahead.
So thank everybody for coming tonight. Thank you all for coming out to the town hall on Wednesday. It was a great turnout. I want to give special credit to Mr. Tim O'Reilly, who, everybody that was in attendance there, you witnessed Tim stand up in front of that crowd, a couple of hundred people, and get yelled at, booed, and he held his composure, and he got most of the points across. Some of it was dinned down, obviously, but special credit to Mr. O'Reilly or Director O'Reilly for doing that and bringing the public's attention to the fact that council does want to help. I do want to bring up comment on a couple of things, and some of it's not great. So at the town hall and in the following days, there was obviously some angry words spoken and printed on social media. I took particular offense to some of the stuff that was directed at the mayor and the deputy mayor for having to leave early. People were quick to judge on them not caring enough to stick around, not thinking for a moment that they're the mayor and the deputy, that they have other responsibilities. We all do. I left a meeting that I was at early to come to that town hall. We all, on a daily basis, we've got lots of stuff that we're doing for the city. So I wanted everybody to understand that they did have other obligations and that they had to leave. And if they didn't have those previous engagements, they would have gladly stayed. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to point out that at this time, the reason we're having this special meeting is because Mayor Reardon saw the turnout that night, heard the frustration in the room, and the next morning, she's the one that's on the phone with Director O'Reilly, Commissioner Hugenholtz, the CAO McGovern, myself, other councillors, and she's the reason that this happens tonight, okay? Because otherwise, this would be a normal night off for us. But it was important enough to get this pushed ahead and deal with it tonight. That's how important the mayor considered this. That's first thing. Second thing is, some of you know me. Some of you even voted for me. If you do know me, you know that I'm not full of shit. Excuse my language. I don't like to waste time or money. I ran to make good decisions for this city, and that's what we do. Will you all agree with those decisions? No. But until you decide to take our places, you have to respect that we are all trying to do our best for you and for this city. We may not always get it right, but everyone on this council wants what's best for this city. The Heatherway decision was made after many debates, lots of discussion on how to save money for this city. Those are the kinds of discussion that city staff and council have all the time. That's what we do. Personally, there's no way that 4 lanes is necessary on Heatherway, okay? To connect 2 lanes to 2 lanes, you do not need 4 lanes. And that doesn't matter how many apartment buildings go up on that road, you're not going to justify the traffic count. The truth is, most of us don't like change. And this was a big one. The barriers were never meant to be permanent, okay? It was a way to get the dialogue going again and get input. And having said that, the public input, we heard you loud and clear. That's why staff recommended returning it to 4 lanes and continue to spend money paving it as necessary. That's why I'm moving the recommendation tonight. So once again, thank you for coming out. And thank you, Director O'Reilly and Mayor Reardon.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. And it certainly is a team effort on our part to get this moved forward. Councillor Redwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Director O'Reilly, I know that you were kind of put on the spot that night that we were at the town hall, and thank you for everybody for coming out and engaging too, and engaging online. I think you got a lot of response online too. I think that it's really important for us to continue having engagement all the time with the public, and this is what we wanted. I think that council was really trying to find what do you want for your neighborhood. It was certainly made loud and clear. I think that it's difficult to sometimes give a timeline, but Tim, I'm wondering if it says as soon as possible, how soon do you think it might be possible? And I mean, obviously we have weather issues we have to keep in mind. It could start raining, it could start snowing, and I know that would delay you, but I think that that's kind of a question. The other thing is obviously the road's in a really bad state, so I'm hoping that we're going to patch as we usually would in the winter, and then obviously we want to do some resurfacing in the spring. So just wondering if you have any idea how soon we could look at this if it passes.
Yeah, our staff with the turnout from last week basically started putting plans into place to prepare for it. If all goes well, we're going to have crews out there tomorrow, if not that, the next day to start this process. To close it, we expected to have it done in about a week, give or take, and have it back open again. And yes, we'll, like every other street in the city, between storms, be looking to fill potholes in Heatherway and other streets.
Okay, that's great. And I think it's great. The public has, really reached out to me. I appreciate those sort of comments. The day after these cement barriers went up, I was a little surprised because I stood out there, I think, for about 2 hours watching the traffic. And I watched like 4 cars go on the wrong side of the road within 2 hours. But and Tim actually, by the way, he is so dedicated that he took my call, and I don't call staff on a Friday night, but it felt a little urgent because of that. And so he did make some changes, put more lines, put more signs up. But, the public obviously was saying that night that there was still a lot of safety concerns. So really important to make these changes back, obviously, if those are still a problem. So I appreciate the public's patience, and, council is trying to do what's best. So thank you so much. And Director O'Reilly, I know you couldn't say anything the other night, but I always know that you're always trying to follow through after. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden, over to you.
I'd just like to thank the neighbors for coming out tonight and the other night and the night that we were at Champlain Heights School too. So thank you.
Councillor Harris, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think this is great, to be honest. And I've argued with some of you online about the use of this. I have to say my involvement with this started when I was a youth minister at St. Mary's and St. Bartholomew's on the east side when I lived at Hickey Road at 1845. And I used to run this area, and I always thought that there was a need to change this because it was designed at a time when the city was predicted to get to 120,000 people by 2010. It was ludicrous. We never got there, and so then we got tagged about Boyanna Crescent. My friends Neil and Julia Bradbury, who lived there on Boyanna Crescent, we're always worried about the playground being vandalized, and we lost that playground when we had to do the austerity measures from the 2019 era, 2018 council, and the province essentially held a gun to the city's head and said, either you cut 10 million or we'll figure out how to do it for you. And so I have to take into consideration this, that the council, when we first sat on this in 21 under former CAO John Collin, he presented us options. And one of them that generated a lot of conversation around this table as an option was this green space, this kind of restructuring for pedestrians. Big price tag, didn't have the money for it. And this was a way to try to frame that and to try to direct the conversation into what the art of the possible was for Heatherway. Whether any of us get that or not, sorry, it's all good, little one. I think it's important that people show up and they take ownership of their community. You guys have all done that. And you can't, whether we get the outcome as a city that is that top tier, cost effective, whatever, it doesn't matter. What matters is the community comes together, they speak for what they want, and that this body has an opportunity to hear you. I think that's happened. I've certainly heard you. Wandered into conversations online saying, hey, I think it would be good to put housing over on some of those spots, skinny homes. Listen, we're not going to get there unless we build some consensus in the community for that to happen. And if it's not there, it's not there, right? So I'm happy to support this. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mayor, for, really punching this through and showing that, what, democracy can still work. We still can come together and do things quickly. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. That's it. As you all know, being the mayor, I don't vote, and except to break a tie, I will not need to vote tonight. I think you probably recognize that. But I will say that when I campaigned in 21, I walked the city because it was right after COVID, and it was really, I didn't feel comfortable knocking on people's doors. I just thought people would be not good with that. And I remember walking Heatherway and thinking, wow, this is quite the street over here. And, for the amount of people and vehicles that would be on it at the meeting, Tim was talking to Mr. Director O'Reilly, said it's built for 20,000 vehicles a day. So it's, it's getting 3,000 or 4,000. But, it would be, I always think about active transportation and how can we get active transportation. So hopefully that's in your future, going down the road, is how do we increase active transportation? You can say now it wouldn't really go anywhere, but it's only going to go somewhere if another road has active transportation on it. So we need to start somewhere. We need to look at our amenities. We need to figure out how to connect our amenities with active transportation, biking, walking, transit, those sorts of things. Those are the things that make your city livable. And those are the things that you'll see most of the other cities. All other cities are doing that. They're moving towards that. There's a climate change. You can bike for economic reasons. You can bike for your personal health reasons. You can bike because it's faster. As you probably all know, if you look through my Facebook, I was just in Denmark. And when you ask people who live in Copenhagen why they bike, they don't bike for any reason, any of those reasons you think. They bike because they can get from A to B faster. But over there, if you have two bike lanes on different streets, they connect them through a park. So right now we'll have a bike lane on Charlotte Street and we have one on Sydney. So we could have a bike lane that goes through King Square. So what it does is it makes your journey faster. And that's the trigger to get people on bikes. It's a healthier way to travel, better for the environment, all kinds of reasons. But I'm always thinking of that going forward as well. So I won't be voting tonight, but the motion has been moved and seconded. And it's on the floor, so I'm going to call the question. I don't see any more lights on. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Motion carried. Excellent. So that ends the meeting for us, but I always go over to Councillor Lowe because he gives us the final motion, which is? He's moving the motion to be adjourned. Seconder, Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here.